Hi, I'm Evie Kimsing, editor of IdentityWeek.net. We're here at the Washington Convention Center for Identity Week America. It's been a great show so far, and now I'm sitting down with Carole House, who's the former director for Cybersecurity and Secure Digital Innovation at the National Security Council, the White House. Hi, Carole.
Hi.
Are there enough frameworks in place for governments to govern public IT infrastructure?
Oh, that's a great question, and it was something that was so important to the Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Tech, my old boss at the NSC, and Newberger. There's been a lot of efforts underway to try to figure out how to drive greater cybersecurity and infrastructure security, supply chain risk management and understanding across critical infrastructure. I think some of the biggest challenges in the US is that our critical infrastructure authorities related to cybersecurity and IT risk management are really kind of patchwork frameworks. They're fragmented and inconsistent across different sectors. Some sectors have pretty rigid requirements, like the financial sector, and then there's other sectors that really don't have any regulation potentially at all, or not very stringent ones. So I don't think that there's enough frameworks for authority that federal agencies have to be able to require the necessary cyber hygiene that's needed across critical infrastructure, given the sustained, persistent cybersecurity threats that we face, like ransomware. There's a lot of engagement on those issue sets with the administration, with the Hill, to try to figure out what are the right initiatives to drive that should be driven through the market, because a framework doesn't have to be policy and legislative authority. It can be engagement with the sector. So I'm really excited that the Biden administration has tried things like the Industrial Control System Initiative to try to help secure things like trains and transportation and energy and even the water systems. There's a lot of efforts that have been underway to try to help drive and promote greater cybersecurity. But I do think that stronger authorities in the government to try to help drive greater visibility as well as cybersecurity across critical infrastructure when they're providing high-value services to citizens. They need to make sure that their systems and networks are secure, as well as the data that's held on them.
And it's important for governments and the private sector to
Yes, absolutely.
be governed in this way. What are the current challenges for the government then in terms of cybersecurity, AI engineering, digital identity technology?
Yeah, so many challenges, and some of my favorite topics, by the way. I love all those emerging technologies. And actually, right now I'm serving as the chair of the Technology Advisory Committee for the CFTC, which is one of the financial regulatory agencies, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And one of the commissioners, Christy Goldsmith-Romero, just stood up the Technology Advisory Committee and has 3 subcommittees focused on responsible use of AI, cybersecurity, and use of distributed ledger technologies and digital assets. So again, some of my favorite topics. A lot of the key challenges that I see that are coming up across issues like artificial intelligence, like blockchain technology, even in cyber, there's a lot of discussion, especially in cyber, around open source software security that I see that's being echoed throughout the AI discussion as well as the blockchain discussion, which is what is the right amount of control and requirement for accountability, really, that should be built into open source software platforms. How do you build in accountability to those ecosystems? How do you build in partnerships and try to drive appropriate security, if it's software security, because we have government agencies that are using this open source software in their own applications. And then also in AI, the same sorts of things are happening and being addressed, where you have the Hill and regulators trying to think about how we should be looking at AI and regulating it. Well, when AI is just a technology and it can be used ranging across energy applications to smart cars to financial to creating artwork or funny memes, like which of those some of those applications are more highly sensitive and should be more regulated than others. But there's a lot of key issues at play around understanding their vulnerabilities to exploitation, potential points and vulnerabilities of bias being built in and discrimination that could be advertently or inadvertently being built into those ecosystems. The most important issue I think that's at play with whether it's software, open source software, or AI, or distributed ledger technologies, it pertains to explainability and transparency. That's one of the principles that was actually in the White House's published blueprint on AI. There were several principles that were listed pertaining to security and bias and safety, but the transparency and explainability one I find as really the most important critical pillar that you have to get first in order to be able to see if the other ones are true and are happening. So I think really building in through standards work that hopefully will be industry driven and government adopted and influenced will really try to help those technologies understand their need to build in features like transparency and explainability, and then where accountability needs to exist across the ecosystems.
And just looking at digital identity then, should the industry and government be moving towards an identity-based verification by using readily available technologies, blockchain, AI, smartphones, government-issued digital documents?
I definitely hope so. The concept of evidence-based verification is really critical to move past knowledge-based verification when people are treating attributes like social security numbers as if they're secrets, like they're not. That's kind of an open secret, and it was never meant to be an authenticator. It's an identifier. There's so many things that are being conflated and misunderstood about their role in the very complex identity ecosystem. Evidence-based verification is the only way to successfully combat the hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud that we're seeing every year. I mean, the Secret Service, I think, testified in the case of the COVID-19 pandemic that the U.S. government, I think, had over $100 billion in fraudulent payments in the case of just pandemic relief funds in a pretty short time, right? And of course, outside of pandemic relief funds, there's lots of other federal benefits fraud, state benefits fraud, and just general pervasive fraud that we see through healthcare, insurance, the financial sector. If we were doing identity verification right, we wouldn't have a banking system that's full of synthetic identities. So we're really not getting that right. I think that the government, whether you're looking at state government issuers like for mobile driver's licenses or other credentials, the federal government, when you think about passports and other documents, maybe the social security card, I don't know, but really any credential that's being issued physically, I think it makes sense that to support the future of a digital economy, that we need to be able to issue digital credentials, issue verifiable credentials that can be used across a digital economy to get access to critical services. So I think we have to evolve our identity system to issuing credentials and allow technology to help us support and combat the pervasive fraud, especially as AI is growing to enable deepfakes and cybercrime to propagate at scale. Democratization of technology is great and good for good guys. It just also is available to bad guys. So we need to think about the controls that we can put in place to try to at least take away the easiest vectors where the government can issue standards compliant credentials. There's lots of work to build on at ISO and other places. So absolutely, we need to move to evidence-based verification.
This is very interesting. Thank you so much, Carole, for talking to me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.